Hey, friends. I thought today we would look into the next section of Gypsy's first book, released Conversations on the Eve of Freedom. In the last video, I accidentally, just completely unaware, unironically called it Confessions on the Eve of Freedom. I actually thought that was the name, but no, it's Conversations, released Conversations on the Eve of Freedom. It sounds like confessions, though, because Gypsy says a lot in this book that she doesn't say later on, that she really switches around after she gets really actually released. And it seems like in this book, she really, really had a lot of PR coaching on how to approach these subjects. And honestly, like I've said before, I think she would be in a better position had she stuck to these things, but she wasn't capable because she obviously didn't actually believe them. It was PR speak. So, anyway, let's delve into it, friends. It says, maybe I'll become a witch. And then we have a picture of Gypsy sitting there with her pentagram on, living her little 90s Wiccan fantasy. And here's what she says, friends. My journey back to God and faith was not a linear one. Religion is complicated, and belief takes a kind of faith that is not easy to achieve. I don't think faith comes naturally or is innate. I think it's a decision and a practice unto itself. Practice needs to be reinforced. Practice is not perfect, so sometimes you lapse. It's hard to stay steadfast in faith, especially when you are like me, who looks for actions as proof positive that there is something to believe in. I know that is the opposite of faith, which is by definition absent of the need for proof. I've grappled and still do. During COVID, at the height of fear and uncertainty, Amelia became my new roommate. She's a practicing Wiccan and to this day part of my inner circle. As I mentioned last chapter, she and I had a lot in common. The girls who had their mothers murdered, so I asked her to tell me about her beliefs and practices. Growing up near New Orleans, there was obviously a strong Catholic influence on me, the biggest being Fat Tuesday and Mardi Gras, which signified the beginning of Lent, so the holiest time of year that leads up to Easter, Christ's resurrection. But there was a flip side, the supernatural influence of voodoo and witchcraft and pagan rituals and tarot and fortune telling. So learning about Wicca felt familiar. Its reverence toward the elements of nature around us, earth, fire, water, air, appealed to me as a nature lover. The idea that one could control the forces within her himself, a core principle of Wicca, was familiar to me as well. Growing up with a mother who believed in manifesting outcomes through spells, exploring Wicca was a necessary phase to go through in my quest to form my identity. Just like my mother had done when she explored the supernatural in her 20s and then again by church hopping. Gypsy and Amelia Bird, this is me breaking in with some commentary, friends. Gypsy and Amelia Bird are a really interesting story because, yeah, their tales are very, very similar, except Amelia's boyfriend murdered more than just her mom, her siblings. Some of them were taken out as well, I believe. Last year, if you go back in my videos, last year I did a video intending to deep dive the Amelia Bird case right after Gypsy put out her advocacy video for Amelia after she got released. And the case is so far back, I had a really hard time finding enough information about it to feel like I could form a good opinion for y'all. You know what I mean? So I just kind of gave up. But hopefully someone else will be able to. Okay, back to the book. Gypsy says, last year in June, I had a nightmare that I was asleep, lying on my back in my bunk in the dark, and I felt something on my chest. In the nightmare, I woke up to a dark figure tearing open my chest and eating my heart. When I woke up from the nightmare, I was in the same position I had been in the dream. I felt paralyzed and frightened with the lights off. When I closed my eyes, the scene from the nightmare reappeared in my awake state. The demon was there. When I opened my eyes, it would disappear. The demon was there. Something was telling me, hey girl, you need to stop wandering on your own and start believing. I told Ryan, I think we need to start praying together. I had felt so lost and not in touch with what is beyond our humanness and our egos. I just started praying on my own very casually. Hey God, I know it's been a while, but I wanted to drop a line and say hi. The nightmare stopped. Sounds like she had a sleep paralysis experience. If any of you have ever experienced sleep paralysis, you'll know what I'm talking about. It is so common to see frightening looking visualizations during a sleep paralysis experience. That there are tons of memes about the sleep paralysis demons. But, because Gypsy is a matricider, I'm sure she took this as something very, very different, friends. And when she describes Wicca, it's very interesting to me that she never mentions the rule of three. Now, I'm not Wiccan myself, but I know a lot about it. I have a lot of friends who are. So, a quick overview here is that Wicca has a few sayings that are kind of, central tenets to the religion. And Wicca is a new religion. It was developed in the 1950s by Gerald Gardner, who took things from other traditions and religions and kind of mashed them together to form his idea of what he wanted Wicca. And, most religions are formed that way. It's no big deal. But there is a big, long poem that goes over one of the really, really central tenets of Wicca, and it is the ending of it and the kind of summation, the TLDR is, "And it harm none, do what you will." Basically, if you're not hurting anybody, don't worry about what you're doing. I'm not sure how Gypsy was reconciling that with being in prison for murder, friends. Then another very central tenet of Wicca is the rule of three, to be very careful what you do because whatever you do will come back to you threefold. Gypsy never mentions the threefold rule either, and I can imagine that probably freaked her out pretty good because considering she already put murder out into the world. So if she continued believing in Wicca, it probably scared the shit out of her and contributed to her sleep paralysis nightmares and had her running back to a religion where she could feel like she could get actual forgiveness and absolution as opposed to always expecting a threefold return of her actions that she'd already put out there. What do y'all think, friends? And I'm not saying anybody has to believe those Wiccan rules, but what I'm explaining is in order for Gypsy to be Wiccan, she had to be studying and trying to reconcile that with what she did. And it sounds to me like it didn't work out for her, friends. What do you all think? Okay, back to the book. Prayer places a protective barrier over my soul, which has been very helpful with controlling my anxiety and shame. As I achieved a calmness in me, I realized I couldn't find solutions to my problems or assuage my fears by reading tarot cards or pulling a hair from my head and reading a love spell. I am not that big and powerful, only God is. So now I am back to feeling a devotion to the Creator and loving His creation. Yeah, she wasn't finding that calmness in Wicca. And I think it's more because of what she never mentioned, because of the threefold rule and the "and it harm none, do as you will." Because I don't see how a murderer is going to be able to really reconcile that in themselves. If there are any of you out there who are deeper into knowledge and practice of Wicca and know a way that a murderer could reconcile that in themselves, let me know. But in the comments, I'm open to understanding because, like I said, I'm not Wiccan myself. So I just know a lot about it from past study and having friends, but there might be more that I don't know. But that's just my suspicion, friends, that the "and it harm none, do what you will," and the threefold rule of whatever action you put out coming back to you threefold, I think that's what freaked her out and moved her on from Wicca. Let me know if you think I'm right or I'm reaching. Okay, so and then Gypsy goes back to the conversations between her and Melissa Moore. So this is Melissa Moore speaking. She says, "Hey, I've been thinking about our last chat about God and how you came and went away from religion and have questioned your faith. I wondered if you think faith is relevant in your life beyond God and religion. I mean, we talked about trust and betrayal before. Do you think you need faith in order to trust? Do they go hand in hand?" And then Gypsy says, "For me, it's the other way around. Trust has to be there before faith happens. If I don't trust you, I'm not going to have faith in you or the idea that you are safe to have in my life. Having faith in someone else means I know that their intentions are pure and that they have that love and care for me in the same balance as I have for them. For example, I have faith that Christy is going to be the best mother to me that she can be and treat me no different than her own biological children because she has already taken those actions and shown me through those actions that this is the case. I'm very much an action person. I used to take people at their word, and their word would wind up empty. There was no action to it. The action must happen for the trust to form, and then the faith develops. The more the cycle goes, the stronger the faith becomes. It's interesting that she says she believes Christy would never treat her different than her own biological children. And I'm putting this question out there to y'all friends. Do any of us think if Mia chose to say, I do not want my baby to be shown on social media, my baby's face, do any of us think Christy would send Mia's baby's face pictures to a content creator who was making anti Mia content? I mean, I realize there aren't really true Mia bashing channels like there are Jit, but still. I don't personally see it happening, friends. What do y'all think? Okay, then Melissa asks Gypsy, what is your definition of faith then? Says long pause. And then Gypsy says, faith is having a feeling that you are safe and that what is making you safe has the power to see you through anything. It's kind of like you are in the palm of God's hand. You can go through a hurricane, you can go through a tornado, any kind of storm, but God has you in the palm of his hand and he won't let anything happen to you. You are safe. That is faith to me. I feel like I have been put through a lot of storms, yet I am still not broken. I am not a broken person. I am worthy of being loved. I never had that self worth before. I am not damaged. I am safe. And then this next question from Melissa is very interesting. Melissa says, do you think some of that self worth might be threatened once you are released? And since you are such a public figure now? Gypsy's answers are very, very revealing, friends, because when I look at this, I don't ever see her saying that she's going to be okay if the public doesn't like her or doesn't buy her story. Listen to her answers. Here's what she says. Gypsy says, because I came from a life of constantly being deceptive and telling lies, I am trying to be extremely transparent in my life and be someone who is an honest person. Like writing this book is me trying to prove the opposite of what people might think of me. I'm not hiding anything, I'm an open book. And then Gypsy says again, it comes back to me being an actions speak louder than words person. If I need you to show me the action in order for me to trust you, I need to do the same for people to put their faith in me. I have to show them first what I want them to believe about me and develop a trust in me that the action will always be consistent. I think that will definitely improve my self worth. Y'all hear what I hear there, friends? She says that she's going to show people that she's consistent. She's going to show people she's an open book. She's going to show people through actions that she's honest, just like she would need actions from them. She says, I have to show them first what I want them to believe about me and develop a trust in me that the action will be consistent. And I think that will definitely improve my self worth. What she's saying is, when I do the things that make the public love me, it will improve my self worth. But she got out and she didn't do the things, friends. She was inconsistent all over the damn place and caught in lies constantly. I suspect, even though I'm no Melissa Moore fan, and any of you look back at my previous Melissa Moore videos, you'll know that. But I suspect Melissa Moore had the awareness of Gypsy's inconsistencies to know that there were going to be issues and was trying to see if Gypsy was prepared to handle those. And to me, she demonstrated there in her answer that no, only thing she is prepared to handle is making people love her. What do y'all think, friends? Let me know in the comments. Then Melissa asks, are you scared or nervous about what is waiting for you on the outside? Like, is there any part of you that is nervous about being released? And Gypsy says, I'm not scared to get out. I know it will be different. And that's where the faith in God and hopefully in myself, even though I have a long way to go with that, comes in. I'll be leaning on my faith in God and my family, and I will pull my strength from all three. I am already making strides to try as a public figure to take responsible and meaningful action in a public way. I don't want to do something because I'm getting compensated. Oh, oh my God. Okay, sorry, I lost my composure, friends. Gypsy said, I don't want to do something because I'm getting compensated. I want to have a presence and an impact. That is what will help me heal while making amends for not just my transgressions, but the transgressions of my mother who conned so many people and organizations. The ones I feel the worst about is the Make a Wish Foundation. To give back to them and so many others will be the first exercise of my own free will. And that's funny, friends. Wasn't she on a live not too long ago saying, I don't know anybody a damn thing? And she did make a donation apparently to, I think it was Make-A-Wish or Habitat or something like that, and got upset because Lifetime filmed it and didn't show it. She did it for the camera. Cute Limp Biscuit. She did it all for the camera, so she can get that show. Anyway, then Melissa says, "Have you forgiven yourself for what you've done?" Gypsy says, "Not everyone has forgiven me for my mom's fraud. There are still people to this day that will not talk to me. They might not hate me, but they don't want any part of my life. There are 20 people who rejected my Facebook friend request." Again, she didn't answer Melissa's question at all. Melissa said, "Have you forgiven yourself?" And she's still worried about other people. And she says, "Well, people won't forgive me for my mom's fraud. They're rejecting my Facebook request." And let's go back again. She said earlier she was taught to live a life of lies and deception. Okay. Then she says, "But people won't forgive me for my mom's frauds." Well, you participated in them up to the age of 24. I don't blame her for what she did under the age of 18. You know what I mean? But 18 to 24, then she culminated it all in murder when she was leaving to go visit men on a semi-regular basis. We know it from her own words in her email. But she couldn't just, leave Dee Dee. She had to leave her behind, stabbed and bleeding out. Melissa asks, "Do you blame them?" And Gypsy says, "No, not at all. They might not wish me harm, but I think maybe that seeing me brings them back to a not happy time for them. It might not be anything personal. The betrayal was so profound. Maybe some people could forgive and not forget, like my aunts who I speak to once a year or so. The conversations don't last very long, but they always end with, you could have told us instead of reaching out to men on Facebook, and you didn't." Yeah, that's the whole damn thing, Gypsy. You had a lot of options and you chose matricide. Regardless of Dee Dee's issues, any wrongs that she may or may not have committed, you chose matricide at 24 years of age when you had been regularly leaving the house to meet Dan, to meet Richard Keene. Yeah, who knows who else? But did you also notice in the answer Gypsy gave, she's still kind of rationalizing things to her behavior? She says, "I think maybe seeing me brings them back to a not happy time for them. It might not be anything personal. The betrayal was so profound. Maybe some people could forgive and not forget." The betrayal that was so profound was 50% you doing the matricide. Had everyone discovered that y'all were frauds and there was no body left in the wake and the trauma of a murder in the midst of a community who had been trying to help them, that would have been way less traumatizing on literally everyone, including Gypsy Rose herself. But she couldn't deal with the shame. She didn't want to be looked down on. She still can't stand the thought of being looked down on for the murder. That's why, regardless of the things she says in this book, where she's actually taking responsibility and saying, "Yes, I am a murderer," she immediately got out and goes on the Vile Files and is like, "I don't identify as a murderer." What's in her actual heart and mind comes out, regardless of how many PR crafted, decent statements she puts out, friends. If y'all disagree or have any commentary to add to that, please let me know in the comments. I love interacting. Melissa says, "How does that make you feel?" And Gypsy says, "It makes me feel like shit." Long pause. "All I can do is say I'm sorry." Yeah, well, sorry doesn't really cover murder. You know what I mean, friends? Melissa says, "Have you forgiven your mom?" Gypsy says, "Right now, I think I have the most forgiveness for her than I have ever had. I am doing my best now to understand how my mom was, what made her the way she was. I wonder if there's more that I don't know about my mother that caused her to become the way she was. Knowing that people are shaped by the things that happen to them, I have gotten to a place of compassion for my mother. I try to use that compassion towards myself too. As for other people who have done me wrong, like the doctors, it's a process to let go of the grudge and negativity that can weigh you down. It's hard." That is vastly different from her going on lives now that she's actually completely free and saying Dee Dee was a shit piece of mom and comparing Dee Dee to Hitler and saying nobody mourns Hitler and that's why nobody mourns Dee Dee, and then compared herself to Jesus Christ. Then Melissa says, "You didn't say before if you've forgiven yourself, have you?" Gypsy says, "I'm still working on it." I think she knew that was the right thing to say there, friends. Now that she's out, she makes no bones about the fact that, like I said, she compares deity to Hitler, calls her a shit piece of mom, and Blake basically says she deserved it. And there's a no section called Having Faith in Myself. Gypsy says, when I pray to God, I ask Him to give me the strength I need to be a good person and to reach my potential for the rest of my life. I think what I really mean to ask for is the strength to put my faith in myself, in my abilities, to trust that I can become a better version of myself. It's all a leap of faith. Like my journey to and from God over the years, I expect that developing a faith in myself will also be a winding road. Who doesn't have self doubt? When I do begin to question God or myself, I try to exercise that self compassion, remembering how far I've come, how much work I have done to get to this place where I know I am flawed but not broken. I have this mental image of an idealistic version of myself, successful, kind, independent, but I know I can't get there immediately. And nobody can do anything without help, and we need to ask God for it often. I consider myself a work of art in progress. I have the vision for the final masterpiece, but I'm only a few brushstrokes in. Having faith in the bigger picture that the full work will ultimately form in the public eye is how I try to keep faith in myself. It's going to take time. Maybe I need to start praying for patience. Fun fact, I'm a terrible speller. We know, Gypsy. And that's not just because I lacked a formal education. Yeah, we know that too. Even today, my spelling sucks. I emailed Ryan before thanking him for his patience in pulling so many of the pictures in this book for me. I wrote, I really appreciate your patience, spelled like a patient in a hospital. For so long, I never knew there was another spelling of a word that had so much prominence in my life. Well, how does she explain away her spelling of ant? Or I mean, ain't. I'm just so used to reading it as ant. I assume y'all gonna know what I mean. Oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna read this next chapter and then I'll stop to edit, friends. The next one is chapter 4. It says, On becoming a public figure. Am I even an actual person or am I just a character? Me, musing on my tablet from Chillicothe Correctional Center. Oh my God, you know what that reminds me of, friends? Reminds me of Ryan saying, like, he acts like this was some deep, deep exercise. He was like, I actually wrote on a piece of paper, is this really happening to me? And I held it up in front of a mirror by my face, reading it. And then I took a picture and sent it to a friend. And I said, is this really happening to me? That's how surprised I was. But we all see his emails that he was desperately begging for any role in Gypsy's life from basically day one. He didn't give a shit if it was sex slave, baby daddy, boyfriend number two. Hey friends, I recorded a whole other 30 minutes of this video on the book, but from this point out, my microphone started cutting out really bad. I don't know why. It continued through the whole rest of the recording, and I wasn't able to tell until I started editing. So I'm just going to dump that part rather than leave it here sounding bad and re-record that tomorrow. I'm revisiting some old Feline footage here because we haven't seen her in a while. I think she just got big enough to run with her herd where she didn't need to be left here with me to be babysit anymore by her mom. Hopefully they bring back new fawns next spring, friends. Anyway, I will have another video for you tomorrow and we will talk again soon. I hope everyone's having a good day.